Hi folks, I'm back again. The first video was cut short. Oh gee, I wonder who did that. Okay, so where were we? This is again from the article, How Far in the Future is the Ban on Psychotronics? Transmitting human speech into the human brain by means of electromagnetic waves is for researchers one of the most difficult tasks. It must be much easier to control human emotions that motivate human thinking, decision-making, and actions. People who claim to be victims of experiments with those devices complain, aside of hearing voices, of false feelings and aches of internal organs, a condition physicians are unable to diagnose. In November 2000, the Committee on Security of the Russian State Duma stated that capabilities enabling remote control of the human nervous system or the remote infliction of health impairment are available to many modern governments. It is evident that those technologies are used in conflict with the Nuremberg Code for experiments on unwitting human subjects. In 2001, the newspapers of the U.S. Army wrote that Israel was experimenting with those weapons on Palestinians. Ousted Honduran President Manuel Zelaya, while under siege at the Brazilian embassy in Honduras, complained that he had been subjected to an electron bombardment with microwaves, which produces headache and organic destabilization. When asked by Democracy Now!'s Amy Goodman if he knew about this in the Honduran arsenal, he replied, "Yes, of course." The use of these weapons is re-emerging in times of political crisis. According to Russian daily newspapers, during the failed push against Mikhail Gorbachev in 1991, General Kobitz warned the defenders of the Russian White House that mind control technology could be used against them. After the push, the vice president of the League of Independent Scientists of the USSR, Viktor Sedlecki, published a declaration in the Russian daily Pravda where he stated, quote, "As an expert and a legal entity, I declare that mass production of psychotronic biogenerators was launched in Kiev. I cannot assert for sure that there were exactly Kiev generators that were used during the push. However, the fact that they were used is obvious to me. What are psychotronic generators? It is an electronic equipment producing the effect of guided control in human organism. It especially affects the left and right hemisphere of the cortex. This is also the technology of the U.S. Project Zombie 5, end quote. He further stated that due to the inexperience of the personnel who operated them, the attempt to use the generators failed. Presently, in the U.S., several hundred people are complaining of the remote manipulation of their nervous system. Well, this was from 2013. I think the numbers would be larger by now. It should be noted that most of those people pass through mental hospitals. Lopatin visited the U.S. in 1999 to meet with Richard Cheney. At that time, he was described as the leader of a new breed of Soviet dissidents. Then he disappeared from top ranks of Russian politicians. Vladimir Lopatin was working on the Committee on Security of the Russian State Duma, and he introduced a bill banning the use of these technologies. Admitted in his book, titled Psychotronic Weapon and Security of Russia, that in Russia, experiments on unwitting citizens were carried out. Why has this research remained classified until now? There are two explanations. First, hold on a minute, lost my place. First, there is a secret arms race in progress in the world, where the superpowers compete to gain decisive supremacy in this area, and in this way master the control of the whole world. Second, the governments keep those technologies in store in case they would not be able to control, by democratic means, the crisis that might arise as a result of their poor decisions. In both cases, the era of democracy and human freedom will come to an end. According to the Declaration of Sergikov, there are at most 8 years left within which those weapons will officially become a part of Russian military arsenal. For democracy, this will mean the beginning of the end. In the past, Russians were not resolved to put those means to work. When the construction of the American HARP system was launched, with the system supposedly being able to target large regions of the planet by vibrating the ionosphere and brain frequencies, Russia declared its willingness to ban mind control technologies. The Russian State Duma and consequently the Interparliamentary Assembly of the Union of Independent States addressed the United Nations and the European Council with a proposal for an international convention banning the development and use of informational weapons. According to the Russian newspaper, in March 1998, the matter was discussed with UN Secretary General and included on the agenda of the General Assembly of the UN. It is most likely that the U.S. refused to negotiate this convention, and in consequence, the ban of informational weapons was not discussed by the UN General Assembly. Even in the U.S. Congress, approved a bill proposing the ban of mind control technologies, but this was only for a very short period of time. The bill was unchanged, and the ban of those technologies was left out of the Space Preservation Bill. Neither Congress nor the President made an effort to ban mind control weapons. The European Parliament reacted as well to the launch of the HARP system construction, calling for a ban on the manipulation of human beings. The resolution was passed after the testimony of Nick Begich, author of the book Angels Don't Play This Harp. His testimony convinced the European Parliament of the possible use of this system. To manipulate the minds of whole populations. In the European Parliament's Science and Technological Options Assessment panel report, titled Crowd Control Technologies, the European Parliament calls for an international convention and global ban on all research and development, whether civilian or military, which seeks to apply knowledge of the chemical, electrical, sound vibration, or other functioning of the human brain to the development of weapons which might enable any form of manipulation of human beings, including a ban on any actual or possible deployment of such systems. At the same time, the European countries resigned on this intention when accepting the NATO politics of non-lethal weapons. The same STOA report claims that the United States is a major promoter of the use of these tools. Identified by the U.S. Army included directed energy systems and radio frequency weapons. Directed energy system is further defined by the STOA document. Quote, directed energy weapon system designed to match radio frequency source to interfere with human brain activity at synapse level. Since 1999, those weapons have been upgraded for another 13 years. So it's actually another 18 years. By 1976, Brzezinski, the future national security advisor to President Carter, wrote a book titled Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Tectonic Era. In the book, he predicted a more controlled and directed society based on the development of technology, where an elite group will play a leading role, taking advantage of persisting social crisis to use the latest modern techniques for influencing public behavior and keeping society under close surveillance and control. The use of mind control technologies was predicted as well in 1994 publication of Strategic Studies Institute of the U.S. Army War College. The prediction for the year 2000 was the growth of terrorism, drug trafficking, and criminality. This conclusion was drawn, quote, "The president was thus amenable to the use of the sort of psychotechnology which formed the core of the revolution in military affairs. It was necessary to rethink our ethical prohibitions on manipulating the minds of enemies, both international and domestic, through persistent efforts in very sophisticated domestic consciousness raising. Old-fashioned notions of personal privacy and national sovereignty changed. As technology changed the way force was applied, things such as personal courage, face-to-face leadership, and the warfighter mentality became irrelevant. Potential or possible supporters of the insurgency around the world were identified using the comprehensive interagency integrated database. These were categorized as potential or active, with sophisticated personality simulations used to develop, tailor, and focus psychological campaigns for each. So the Institute of Strategic Studies predicted that in the year 2000, those technologies would be so advanced that they would be possible to deprive a human being of his freedom and adjust his personality to the needs of the ruling elite. Most probably, those technologies were at this level already in 1994. So that's the end of that article. Oh my goodness. We're dealing with some terrible things here. I'm still in business here. They haven't shut me down yet, so I will go to the article by Cheryl Welsh, and I will go to let's see, 1976, from The Zapping of America by Paul Brodeur. Quote, a report published in the New York Times on October 30th, 1976, revealed that in recent months a mysterious broadband shortwave radio signal had been broadcast intermittently from the Soviet Union. The signal was so powerful that it disrupted radio and telecommunications throughout the world, end quote. Quote, Dr. Zarit is concerned about the Russian signal because of its potential hazard to human beings. It was very clear that such an encoding impressed onto carrier wavelengths could have a central nervous system effect, end quote. From NBC Magazine with David Brinkley, 1981, quote, David Brinkley states, quote, as I say, I find it hard to believe. It is crazy, and none of us here knows what to make of it. The Russian government is known to be trying to change human behavior by external electronic influences. We do know that much, and we know that some kind of Russian transmitter is bombarding this country with extreme low-frequency radio waves, end quote. Okay, from the same article, the man's name is William Bice. For the past 4 years, he has traveled the Pacific Northwest monitoring strange radio signals. Garrick Utley asks, to what extent can you disrupt the mental process? The brain, through the use of electronic fields, microwaves. Bice replies, well, I would think that the easiest way to do it would be microwaves. Gary Utley stated, Bice has limited equipment but other sources, some of them classified, have traced the signals to transmitters in the Soviet Union. These sources will not discuss their work. Bice will. Okay, let's see. Whoops, sorry. Getting sloppy. Let's go up to the present time. It does sound like we're in a weapons war. Which is unfortunate.